Good afternoon. I call this meeting of the Job Growth, Energy Affordability, Policy, and Finance Committee to order. Today is Tuesday, March 21st. First order of business is approval of the minutes. Representative Mahoney moves approval of the minutes dated March 20th. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The minutes are adopted. Members, the first bill we're going to discuss is an informational hearing. This is House File 47. Now, we will not be taking public testimony again because this is an informational hearing, but if the presenters for House File 47 could please come forward. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record. And just for the record, we have 4 bills to go through, and we have the governor's supplemental budget overviews. And if you guys go too long, we're going to have to come back tonight. Yeah. And I work bipartisanly. Yeah. We work bipartisanly in this committee, and my guess is Representative Mahoney is going to kill whatever project for anyone who talks too long. Representative Mahoney?
Does that go for all the bills?
Oh, all the bills, Representative Mahoney, except for the ones that you might filibuster. Never mind. So, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with the testimony.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Mike Slavic. I am the chair of the Dakota County Board of Commissioners, and with me is...
My name is Josh Peterson. I'm Water Resources Engineer for Dakota County.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much. We will, of course, keep this brief. We're going to start with a short video for your viewing pleasure.
I got it.
Commissioner, you always test the video presentation before.
We got it.
There it is.
There we go. Want any audio or not?
Yeah. Well, what the video we're showing here today is the Lake Billsby Dam as it's the 104-year-old turbines on here. This is the hydroelectric plant dam owned by all of Dakota County. I don't know if you're able to
I don't think I can
get the video. So we're just going to be able to show here on here. This is a regional significance. It's over 9 watershed counties that along the Cannon River do go in and create the reservoir at Lake Billsby, which was originally owned by NSP, and then the counties of Goodhue and Dakota went and went and presented this here today. The dam was built in 1909. It's 107 years old, and the turbines were installed in 1910, producing about 12,000 megawatts of electricity. We're here today. Over the last number of years, the Dakota County Board and the taxpayers have put over $6 million into dam safety improvements. This is of local dollars that have gone to make sure the dam is safe. It is actually classified under Federal Emergency Regulation Commission as a high hazard dam, and as a result of that, with the city of Cannon Falls right below, the regional significance matters with that. And we are here today to actually ask for a cost share match of $7.5 million for which will be matched by local resources for the new turbine upgrades. The current purchasing power plan is coming up, and what's happening is typically in many of the utilities that's being dramatically reduced, and with that we'll actually come to a point where without new turbines we will actually cost more money to run the dam than it will actually produce electricity for this. So with that, I don't know if there's anything further, Josh, that you had or questions from the committee.
And thank you, Commissioner. Do you have any other expert testifiers or former city administrators from cities who wish to testify or anything?
I always say our expert sitting next to me, he always makes me look good, so I don't know if there's any...
Yeah. Add any additional testimony?
No, I think Commissioner Slavic covered it very well. The Billsby Dam is a valuable asset to not only Dakota County, but the region and Lake Billsby and the parks there. So anything we can do to, take care of the project and also increase its capacity from an energy standpoint to help further fund it and take care of the capital improvements that are required of us by the federal regulators would be great.
And just to be clear, so right now the current capacity, maximum capacity of the turbines is how much, and what would the new turbines make them?
Yeah, the current capacity is 2.2 megawatts. The new proposed project would be around 4 megawatts of production. So to put that in a scale, today we produce enough power to maybe power the city of Cannon Falls. So be able to produce enough power to 2 cities.
And over the year right now you produce how many megawatt hours, and what would be the expectation with this? What would you end up with?
Yeah, we currently produce about 12,000 megawatt hours per year. We would move that up to about 20,000 megawatt hours.
Good. Well, thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Thank you very much for the thorough presentation. We appreciate it. And Commissioner, good to see you again.
You as well. Thank you very much, Mr.
And
Chair.
Mr. Melky, did you wish to add anything or not?
I'm going to keep this short. No.
There you go. Good job. Thank you very much.
Somebody finally listens to you.
All right, is Representative Thiessen here? No? Okay, then we'll go House File 6. The chair will move House File 6 for possible inclusion in a later bill. I will also move the DE2 amendment to get my bill in the form that I would like. The research summary that's in your packets conforms to the DE2 amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed say nay. Motion prevails. This is the amendment is adopted. Members of the committee, what this is this is the Public Utilities Commission reform bill for the session. As everyone knows, there has been quite a bit of controversial activity in the Public Utilities Commission. Under current state law, there is supposed to be no more than 3 members of one political party in the Public Utilities Commission. It is clear by any objective view of the record and of previous history that that is not the case right now. There are more than 3 members of one political party on the Public Utilities Commission. And quite simply, what this bill does is it restores the Public Utilities Commission to its original intent, and that is of a balanced, reasonable, and predictable regulatory agency that the state of Minnesota and stakeholders can count on and have a high degree of probability and certainty for how they will be going forward. And it accomplishes this through 2 things. Number 1 is it decentralizes the appointment process. Right now, one person gets to decide who is on the Public Utilities Commission, and as a result of that, we end up with radical changes in state policy based off of one election. And we do not want that. We want a stable, consistent, and reasonable Public Utilities Commission. So what this bill does is, beginning with this summer, it allows both the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader to appoint 1 member to the Public Utilities Commission. In February of 2019, the new governor, or the current governor, if he decided to run for re-election and ran, would appoint a 3rd spot to the Public Utilities Commission. And then in July of 2019, the Speaker of the House and the Minority Leader of the House would make the 4th and 5th appointments. The important factor to point out here is that at no point will you have anything other than more than 3 members of one political party being in the Public Utilities Commission. If you can have an activist progressive Public Utilities Commission, then you can have an activist conservative Public Utilities Commission. And I don't think the state of Minnesota or its stakeholders are well served by having that sort of agency. And again, the focus is on returning the Public Utilities Commission to its original roots and its original structure, or balanced regulatory agency. That is the completion of my testimony, and I'm happy to take public comment from members of the committee, the public at this time. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion. We'll move to member questions and comments. Questions from members of the committee? Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as a lot of people know, House File 6 was originally drafted, and I was chief author. And I'm happy to work with you, Mr. Chair, on this. I think that the issue that we're all facing is, how do we get to some regulatory certainty? And we've heard a lot about that in the last couple of years in the legislature. Whoever comes before the PUC, I think, is looking for some certainty. And I think that the approach that you're taking here will move us a step closer to some regulatory certainty. And I do believe that there's some decisions that have been made by the PUC that have encouraged me personally to pursue some changes in how they go about getting appointed to the Public Utilities Commission. And I think anything that we can do to move in that direction is going to be a benefit to ratepayers and the people of the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Any other comment or questions? Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I was late. There were some pediatricians in my office, and I did not want to, they came without an appointment, but I did not want to miss them. Representative Fabian, help us understand how you can have regulatory certainty in a world that is changing so fast and so uncertain.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Representative Fabian.
Well, and I think that the uncertainty that has happened, and I'll go back to the bill that I had in 2016 with regards to net metering and who should regulate electric co-ops and municipal utilities. The explicit intention of the bill that I had that was signed into law by Governor Dayton gave our rural electric co-ops and our municipal utilities the sole authority to regulate themselves. And when the docket was filed with the PUC with regards to the net metering, you know, the questions that were raised with regards to small-scale distributed generation, I sent a letter to the PUC stating emphatically that what they were doing was absolutely contrary to the intent of the author and the intent of the legislation. And Representative Garofalo, Chair Garofalo, referred to an activist PUC. I don't believe that the PUC abided by the intentions of the statute, and I think that we need to make some changes so that when an author of a bill that is signed by the governor informs the PUC that they are going against the intention of the bill, that gives me great concern. We as legislators are charged with making the laws and so forth, and in this case, the PUC is in charge of doing the regulations. And for the PUC to take on the regulation of a rural electric co-op or a municipal utility goes totally contrary to what my intention was.
And Representative Agenius, just to be clear, in result of the governor's action yesterday of vetoing House File 234, Representative Fabian and I have reached an agreement that there's a motion at the House desk to transfer chief authorship of House File 6 to me to demonstrate the House majority's commitment on this issue. So if you have questions about the bill, you're more than welcome to direct them at me as well. So Representative Agenius.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have read the bill, I mean, the change in the law, but if I remember correctly, there were very, that it was well-written, and it said that there could be changes in net metering. There could be a fee, but it had to meet 3 criteria. And right off I can't remember those 3 criteria, and there was a question whether those criteria were being met. And we always, in law, give someone a right of appeal if they are disagreeing. That's just part of a democratic system, to allow someone to appeal. And that, I think, was what happened in the net metering case, that there was a question whether or not some of the co-ops, not all of them certainly, but whether some of them were meeting the 3 criteria that were listed in law. And so I think that, unless you're going to take away a right of appeal, and I can't, I would be surprised to see any Democrat or Republican wanting to do that. Maybe we should go back and look at those 3 criteria and see if they were, I thought they were well-written, but somebody might disagree with me on that. I know that they had to be reasonable. That was one of the criteria.
Yep. And Representative Agenius, I'm not inclined to have a debate on the net metering policy today. We have House File 6 before us. Representative Fabian certainly injected it into the debate when he mentioned it, but I'll tell you that the purpose, under state law right now, we're not supposed to have more than 3 members of one political party on the same political party on the Public Utilities Commission. And without, I don't want to pull personalities and individuals into it, but the record clearly shows that's not the case right now. And so this bill is to clarify and decentralize that decision-making process to make sure that we have more balance on the Public Utilities Commission. Is there any additional comments or questions? Representative Mahoney.
Mr. Chair, where is this bill going?
We're laying it over, Representative Mahoney.
Well, it doesn't have a fiscal impact. I understand you may want to make a statement for something or another, but if you want a with no fiscal impact, I don't understand why we don't just send it along to the floor and have our vote there. And then we can have a jolly old conversation on the floor.
Sounds good, Representative Mahoney. Any closing comments? Seeing none, the chair renews
Not
his
into
motion to
jolly, I guess.
With that, the chair renews his motion to have House File 6 as amended laid over for possible inclusion in a later bill. Thank you. Representative Thiessen, House File 2220. Representative Thiessen moves House File 2220 for possible inclusion in a later bill. And Representative Thiessen, looks like you have no amendments to your bill in your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to stay here so they can use those seats, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is legislation to support the Center for Rural Policy and Development. I hope most members know what that organization is. It's actually, I think, one of the strongest research organizations we've got going for us in the state of Minnesota on some issues that are really, really important and have been a great resource for me in my too many years here. But I'd just like to turn it over to the testifiers, starting with our former colleague, Brad Finstead.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Finstead with the Center for Rural Policy and Development. And, excuse me, I am a recovering politician, so I'll try to keep this very quick in respect of your time. But we're very happy to be here today and very thankful for the support that the state has given the center since 1997. The center was created with the from a partnership through the state of Minnesota and the leading foundations in the state, Bremer, Bland, and McKnight. And really our purpose or our calling was to look at policy from a global perspective through the lens of rural Minnesota. We are the only statewide 501c3 nonprofit private foundation, private research organization. We pride ourselves on being nonpartisan, unbiased, and really just try to take a look at the issues from a rural angle and a rural lens. The bill in front of you that Representative Thiessen has graciously authored hopefully puts us back on a more stable footing from a state funding perspective. Since 1997, we started out strong with the initial well-groomed partnership with the state and the foundations, and then obviously a lot of you know of the financial roller coaster ride we've been on as a state since the early 2000s. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here, and hopefully you've looked at our work or we've been able to provide you with information. If not, we look forward to that opportunity. And just put in a plug that all of our research, all of our information is on ruralmn.org, and please use it and please use us. Mr. Chair, if it's all right, I have one of our many board members here. Just a quick piece on that. 14 of our board members are appointed by the governor, and then we also have a board member appointed by the Speaker of the House, and then a board member appointed by the Senate Majority Leader. So in the room here behind us, we have some current and former board members, and then with me I have the chair of our Finance Committee. We can proceed with that.
Very good. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with the testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Dave Ladd. I currently serve on the Board of Directors for the Center for Rural Policy, and as Brad said, I am the current Finance Committee Chair. And I think Brad did a good job, and we again thank Representative Thiessen for bringing this bill before you. Is as far as what, well, let me give you a little bit of the why. For well over a decade, and you'll see the fund, kind of the ebbs and flows of funding, I believe is in your packet. We've lived pretty lean at the center. And whether it's been having to make some very difficult decisions in the Finance Committee and as a Board of Directors on allocating resources and the research and how we get our message out, the research has always remained the core and the foundation and the fundamental touch point for the Center for Rural Policy. So no matter what was happening and those decisions we had to make when it came to financing and allocating our resources, we always focused on nonpartisan, usable research for not only members of the legislature and policymakers, but stakeholders as well that benefit the entire state to help you and others make those difficult decisions many times you need to make and have it be unbiased and nonpartisan. So with that, I think we'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much. First of all, Representative Thiessen, did you have any additional testifiers?
I do not.
This is a public hearing. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Seeing none, we'll go to member comments or questions. Questions from members of the committee. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering what your other sources of funding are besides the state.
Representative, or Mr., is it Representative or Mr. Finstead?
Has been. Watch
Brad?
that. Yeah, Brad's good. I've been called worse, Mr. Chair.
I think I might have done it. too.
I look at a few of you. Mahoney, I see.
Conversations on the floor.
Thank you for the question. So the partnership that was initially intended was to do a 50-50 deal with the state and the major foundations, Blandin, McKnight, and Bremer Foundations. The foundations have been our stronghold from day one, and like I said, the state funding has been a roller coaster ride, so we really are appreciative of the match or the solid funding we get from the foundations. So from an investment standpoint, we double the money that the state gives us by going to the private sector foundations to help fund the organization.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Thiessen, any closing comments?
Well, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for having the hearing, and I will say, the bill is asking, we already had a hearing in the Ag Committee, and so they're considering part of this funding in the Ag Committee, and then the other part here. Traditionally, it started out coming out of this committee. This committee declined like several years ago, and Ag picked up some of it, and so, but I think it's a good, it really, I mean, if you look at this sheet is, that talks about the research they've done recently, on childcare shortage in rural Minnesota, state of water, long-term care, freight rail issues. I mean, these are the issues that we talk about here at the legislature, and they've been really, this organization brings really good information to bear. So, and we can't really do our jobs without that. So I would hope that we can get some support this year, and I thank you for the time again.
Thank you, Representative Thiessen. With that, Representative Thiessen renews his motion to have House, Representative Mahoney.
I know I typically don't try to say anything after the bill authors
Yep.
need his, but I do want to.
Except last night you did too,
Pardon?
to me.
I just want to make the pitch that
No.
these are all good studies, and I've read all but one of them.
Okay, thank you. With that, Representative Thiessen renews his motion to have House File 2220 laid over for possible inclusion in a later bill. Thank you, Representative Thiessen, Representative Mahoney, and thank you to the testifiers. Final bill on the agenda is Representative Metza. Representative Metza moves House File 759 for possible inclusion in a later bill. And Representative Metza, it appears you have a delete all amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, the research summary conforms to the DE3 amendment, and this is what the bill in the form that the author would like. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The DE3 amendment is adopted. Representative Metza, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members, essentially, this bill kind of started off in a different direction than we ended up with our delete all amendment here, and as conversations took place between our Laurentian Energy Authority group and Xcel Energy, they determined that this language before you now would be the best course of action forward for ratepayers both in my region and down here in the Xcel service territory. So this would pretty much just allow the two groups to continue negotiating a new contract and have it go through the regular bells and whistles with the PUC and others to make sure that it is benefiting ratepayers in the Xcel and range territories that it represents. And I have Mr. Leone here from the Laurentian Energy Authority, and he will say a few words, and I will answer any questions after that.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Terry Leone with Laurentian Energy Authority, who are the Hibbing and Virginia municipal utilities from, obviously, Hibbing and Virginia on the Iron Range. I'll keep my comments very short. First, thank you to you, Mr. Chair, and the committee for hearing our bill. As Representative Metza pointed out, which is the biggest thing that we've strived for since we started this project in producing renewable energy for Xcel Energy was to benefit our ratepayers on the Iron Range. Hibbing and Virginia are co-generating facilities, which means we generate both steam heat for our communities as well as electricity. And in light of that, we converted over part of our facilities to biomass to supplement the renewable mandate that was taking place. And again, that was all done to the benefit of our ratepayers to keep our steam systems alive and moving forward. But this amended legislation now benefits continues to benefit our ratepayers in Hibbing and Virginia, but also would go to benefit the ratepayers for Xcel. And with that, I'll leave it for any questions that the committee or you, Mr. Chair, may have.
Thank you very much. Representative Metsa, do you have any other invited testifiers?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Mr. Evans? Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Rick Evans with Xcel Energy. I'm happy to be here in support of Representative Metsa's bill and thank him for working with us very closely along with Mr. Leone over the last few weeks. We talked a little bit last night in the hearing about the biomass mandate that stems out of the 1994 legislation. This is one of the contracts that I think you all met Mr. Smith last night, who was with St. Paul District Energy. That's another one of the contracts, but this one with the Laurentian Energy Project is one of the 3 contracts we have under that biomass mandate. As I mentioned last night, the cost of the energy that's produced by the biomass contracts is among the most expensive and significantly more expensive than the other energy, including wind energy and solar energy that we can currently purchase. And so we have a very strong interest in trying to lower the cost of this energy while also helping, in this case, Hibbing and Virginia maintain their combined heat and power steam system. To give you some idea of what the impact, I didn't share this last night, but I can tell you that the biomass contracts, the 3 of them together, combined have a significant impact on the bills of our customers. For our 10 largest commercial and industrial customers, the biomass contracts that we pay for amount to nearly 5% of their bill. And even for our residential customers, the biomass contracts reflect about almost 2.5% of our average residential customers' bills. And so this is a significant cost being placed on our customers because of the expense of this energy. In the early conversations on Representative Metsa's bill, it became clear to us that we could save our customers significant money and also help Hibbing and Virginia maintain their combined heat and power steam system if we could either terminate our contract, essentially buy our way out of it, or renegotiate the contract where they could burn a cheaper fuel. And that's the main purpose of this, that is the purpose of this legislation, is to allow us to enter into those contracts in spite of the biomass mandate that caused us to enter into them, so that we can either move them to a cheaper fuel and realize those savings for our customers, or possibly buy them out of their contract and realize those savings. Of course, part of what we need to do if we're going to do that is make some kind of a deal with them. If we buy them out of their contract, we're going to have to pay them some money because they're entitled to another 9 years of sales of energy. And so this bill allows us to do this and requires us to take it to the Public Utilities Commission. And if we can demonstrate to the Public Utilities Commission that the money we're saving by either changing or terminating the contract is more than the money it might cost us in order to accomplish that, then the PUC can consider approving those new contracts or approving the termination and allow our customers to save that money. Of course, we won't save the entire 5% because we're going to have to replace that energy with presumably cheaper energy, and we're going to have to, as I say, if we're going to terminate a contract, pay some money out. But on balance, we will be able to we believe, significantly lower our customers' bills. So that's the purpose of this. By the way, just so you know, under the way this is written, this could also apply to the Fibromin contract, which is the turkey manure contract out in Benson, Minnesota. It specifically does not apply to the district energy contract, and they asked not to have it apply to them, which is fine. We'll have further negotiations with them. Their contract is up in 6 years. So it's a little bit closer than even the Laurentian one. But this allows us at least the opportunity when it arises to save our customers money by renegotiating these biomass contracts.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, a quick question on, and I don't know if you have a copy of the bill with you, but on page 2, line 8, I'll read the sentence to you, and you can tell me. It says, basically it talks about the approval of the new or amended power purchase agreement, and then beginning on the end of line 2.6, it says, shall not require the public utility that operates a nuclear-powered electric generation plant to purchase additional biomass energy under this section. Would it be correct in saying that the intent here is so that it doesn't require you to purchase biomass energy under this section? Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Actually, Mr. Glahn suggested to me yesterday that a better word in there besides additional would be replacement. So the point is that if we are able to renegotiate these contracts or terminate them, we would have that much less biomass energy on our system. And that paragraph is intended to provide that we don't have to go then find another biomass contract to replace that in order to meet the existing biomass mandate. So, perhaps if this is going to be incorporated in a future bill, we might want to change that word to replacement rather than additional energy, to make that clear.
Representative Metza, is Mr. Evans' comments consistent with your own?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and I think part of the reason for that clarification is important because we have long-term contracts that we entered into with local chip suppliers and equipment that was purchased specifically for running a biomass type facility. And so I would say that that's accurate. It's not meant to say that there will be none, that it will be potentially dissipated, and I would leave that good work to people at both utilities to do and bring before the PUC.
Thank you. Are there any additional members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion, move to member questions and comments. Representative Anderson. Representative Anderson and then Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Evans, you mentioned the length of contracts left. How many years left on the plant in Benson?
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I believe there's, I want to say 10 or 11 years left on that contract.
Representative Anderson.
And is it correct to say that the wording in this bill would apply the same to Benson as it does to this Laurentian plant up on the Iron Range?
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, Representative Anderson, yes, it would. This doesn't necessarily specify any particular plant, but it would allow us to renegotiate a contract or terminate the contract with the Benson plant as well.
Thank you. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I think, Mr. Evans, you said there's 9 years left on the contract? Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, there's 9 years left on the Laurentian contract, yes.
Okay.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And how long, I know it's kind of, I'm just going to ask you to ballpark how long you think negotiations on this sort of a contract might take.
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, I happen to know that Mr. Leone and my boss, Greg Chamberlain, were meeting this morning, which is about the maybe fourth or fifth meeting that they've had as they work to negotiate this. So I can leave that for Mr. Leone to Representative Thiessen to share.
Yeah. Unless Mr. Leone won an election that I didn't know about, but welcome back to the committee, Mr. Leone.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Representative, there's actually 9.5 years left on our contract with Xcel, and the conversations we've had with Xcel are looking at a July 1 conclusion to our negotiation. It does not include how long it may take to get through the Public Utility Commission.
Sure. Okay.
Representative Scott.
Thank you. If I could ask Mr. Evans another question, please. Thank you. Sorry for the musical chairs, gentlemen. And so,
Representative Scott.
any idea, thank you, Mr. Chair, in the negotiations, and maybe I'm out of the, maybe I shouldn't be asking this question, but what's the ballpark financing piece for buying out a contract like this? Can you kind of walk us through what goes into that decision as to how much money is offered to buy out a contract?
Well, Mr. Chair, Reverend Scott, I maybe should defer to Terry Leone, but what I can tell you is that there's a projected amount of energy production that will happen over the next 9.5 years, and there's a price fixed for that energy that we will pay them for that. So we can predict with a reasonable degree of certainty how much energy we'll buy from them over the next 9.5 years and what the price will be. That is a stream of payments that Laurentian Energy has a right to expect under the current contract. and that has a value. It has a value to us, and it has a value to them. But there's all kinds of other considerations. They could, be used. They could use some money to upgrade their system. They've got some debt they need to pay off. They've got some of these things. So they've got to figure out how much money they need to make this work, and we need to figure out how much money we can spend and still save our customers money. So beyond that, I can't. Mr. Leone will know way more about that from his side, and I'm not doing the negotiating on our side. So.
Okay.
But that's essentially, we're looking at the value of the contract and how we can get to a place where both of us are winners.
Okay,
Representative Scott?
thank you. So I don't know if Mr. Leone has anything to add to that, or Representative Metzen.
Yeah, thank you,
That's a-
Mr. Chair and Representative Scott. I think, overall, what we're looking at, just to be honest for the committee here, is not like a cheaper fuel like coal, more natural gas, something our city is already using. And it would be a conversion down. Our community has put, and the Hibbing community have put a significant amount of money into equipment, other long-term contracts they have with loggers who bought specific equipment to make the chips that are required to burn most efficiently. And so as we gather that information and continue to meet with Excel, I think that's where Mr. Evans presented that both sides will present what they see as the fairest number to pass along rate savings to their utility consumers.
Representative Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so Representative Metza, so Laurentian's been here I think this is the 17th time before our committee since 1994. So if this contract gets done, will that be it? Or are you going to continue to grace our presence every year or every other year with
Representative Metza?
the new? Hopefully this will put them on the right footing, but.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Scott. I'll be gracing you with your presence as long as my voters send me down here. But in regards specifically to the Laurentian Energy Authority, my understanding is this would allow both communities who came together to get a biomass project when the opportunity presented itself to kind of part ways. And my expectation would be that our committee would just be looking at the history in the records here, and that both communities would stand alone as their own public utilities again.
Thank you.
Is there any additional questions or comments from members of the committee? Representative Metza, any closing is there any additional public testimony? Seeing none, Representative Metza, any closing comments?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Thank you. And with that, Representative Metza renews his motion to have House File 759 as amended laid over for possible inclusion in a later bill. Thank you, Representative Metza. Members, what we're going to do now is we're going to review the governor's supplemental budget recommendations. And again, what we're looking at here are the actual budget changes the governor is proposing. It's not an overview of each department. So for the 4 departments, we'll start with DEED, if Commissioner Hardy is here. You're still Commissioner Hardy, right?
When I woke up this morning, I think I was.
And so, again, just for each of the 4 presentations, we're looking for just a brief overview of the governor's change items, not an overview of the department. Is 5 to 10 minutes okay, Commissioner, and then we move to questions, or do you need more time?
I think that'll be fine.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that I do leave time for questions.
Yeah, fair enough. Welcome to the
All right.
committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for the record, my name is Shantara Hardy, and I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief overview of the recommendations from the governor's supplemental budget. As you all know, the governor released his supplemental budget on last Friday. And the department had just a couple recommendations in his budget. The first recommendation was an additional $10 million for our Pathways to Prosperity program. And that program is really focused on providing access to career opportunities for Minnesotans facing barriers to employment. And it's really working with direct employers, but also education institutions to provide access to career pathways. The goal of that program is to make sure that people have access to training opportunities, but also have access to ladders of wealth creation. And so we're looking to get an additional $10 million in that program for both 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 for the program. And this funding would come from the general fund. And we believe this program is really critical as we look to close the gaps for economic disparities. We know that with this program, we're able to be intentional about the investment that we're making in Minnesotans throughout the state, because as we look to what employers are looking for, we know we are seeing skills gaps, and we believe that these programs in partnership with the business community will help us to be able to close that gap. The other two items are actually removing two programs which lead to savings. The first one is spending on the Bemidji Dental Clinic. That's about a $4.5 million savings. And the other one is removing spending on Medelia's public infrastructure. That's about a $98,000 savings. Those are the three items that we requested in the governor's supplemental budget. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the committee for the commissioner?
Just a quick,
Representative Clark.
Mr. Chairman, it's more for you. Do we have a document? We were just trying to look. Is there a document from the department?
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, there is a presentation that was sent to the committee.
I don't have it. Maybe, do others have it?
Yes, we all have it, Representative Clark. No, I am told that there may have been. Do we have an electronic copy of it? Okay, so we're going to email it out to members of the committee. Our apologies, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the Commissioner? Thank you, Commissioner Hardy. Good to see you. Look
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing you next couple months. So.
Thank you.
Next, Assistant Commissioner Ryan Baumtrog from Minnesota Housing Finance. Welcome to the committee. State your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Ryan Baumtrog. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Policy at Minnesota Housing. I'm going to talk, keep things brief, and hopefully bring up a PowerPoint while I get started here.
Hope so. Oh, there it is. Got that one.
Well, actually, I will keep it brief. I think in your packets you see a PowerPoint, so I will just quickly go through it given time consideration. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in front of you to talk about the governor's budget for Minnesota Housing. I'll skip over a little bit of the agency overview. We were in front of the committee several months ago, but Minnesota Housing is a separate agency with a board of directors. We don't use any state appropriations to cover our operating, so all the program dollars that we get from the legislature, which is about $100 million every 2 years, goes straight into programs. We also don't own and operate any housing. We finance housing that is accessed locally by clients in the community. So specifically to the governor's budget recommendations for Minnesota Housing, it includes an increase of $10 million for the biennium, and it's on two key issues for Minnesota Housing. The first is $2 million to support successful home ownership, and the other is an $8 million request for Homework Starts with Home. So I'll spend a little time going through those two requests. First, as it relates to supporting successful home ownership, we think now is a great time to invest in additional resources for home ownership. Interest rates are still, they're increasing, but they're still near historic lows, and home prices, while increasing as well, are still relatively affordable to a great deal of individuals. We're also entering a number of years here where millennials, we're starting to see increases in millennials purchasing homes, and we think it's an opportunity for the state to make an investment in communities for millennial home ownership. We also know that the disparity between white and non-Hispanic homeowners and communities of color is about 37% and has been fairly significant and for a number of years. And so a lot of Minnesota Housing's role in supporting homeownership has helped to address the disparity gap that exists in housing. So I'll go into depth about the two initiatives that are included for supporting successful homeownership. First is a $1.5 million request for down payment and closing cost assistance. We think this will allow us to serve an additional 200 households. It provides a deferred loan to homeowners for down payment and closing cost assistance of up to $8,000 for those purchasing a home. It's also important to know that it's a deferred payment loan, and so if the home is sold, the amount that we give to the homeowner is sent back to Minnesota Housing for this program, and we're able to provide it in additional down payment loans to first-time home buyers. So it's a recycling program that we have at Minnesota Housing. We see a number of families and households across the state that have incomes that can support home ownership, but often it's the inability or the lack of wealth that a family has to access home ownership, and that's what this program and the $1.5 million is for. At the same time, we also know that there are a number of households that aren't ready to become homeowners, and so $500,000 is a request for a program that's called Home Ownership Capacity, and this is a program that provides one-on-one counseling and is intensive financial and home ownership counseling. And so this is really working with organizations throughout the community and in the state that work one-on-one with individuals so they can do credit repair, debt reduction, budgeting, and go through the whole home purchase process. So this is really helping families get in the queue to potentially become homeowners. So we've been able to use some agency resources to fund this on a pilot basis and have had some really great results. It's served more than 1,000 households already. 84% of those are households of color, and about 50% have gone on to purchase their first home. The other 50%, when they leave the program for any number of reasons, sometimes they complete it and decide not to become a homeowner because it's not right for their family and their situation, but they are leaving the program with typically increased savings, reduced debt, better credit scores, so even though they might not ultimately become a homeowner, we still feel like the program has successful results if they don't purchase a home. We do think that the program could serve about 400 households with the $500,000. So quickly, over the past 5 years, we've had some, through the work of realtors and communities alike, had some great results in terms of increasing not only the amount of first-time home buyers that we're able to help, but also as it relates to households of color. About 32% of our first-time home buyers are households of color, and that compares to about 11% for the broader mortgage industry. The second request is for $8 million for an initiative called Homework Starts with Home. And it's a collaboration with the Department of Education. Then it's also an additional request to this body who has provided $4 million for a pilot that we've run for the past 4 years called the Homeless and Highly Mobile Schools Initiative. And so this is learning on what we saw with that pilot and the evaluation we did, which saw that most notably if you provide housing stability for people and families, kids are more likely to attend school, not become chronically absent, and start to do better in school. So what we know about the issue is there's 9,000 children that are identified as homeless or highly mobile across the state, and that overall 35% of those who are homeless in the state in 2016 were children under the age of 18. And there's plenty of research that says even a single episode of homelessness can impact educational achievement for 2 to 3 years. And so what this initiative is providing some additional state resources to stabilize a family. There's a picture or a map in your PowerPoint that shows that nearly every school, there's 1,200 schools across the state that have at least one homeless student last year. And so it really does affect all areas of the state and all schools at some level. There's also a slide that demonstrates that when the state and the federal government provide additional resources to address homelessness, we see results. And so we've seen some really great results. There's still a high level of homelessness that's a concern, but we've seen some reductions in overall homelessness numbers as a result of what we feel are some strong state investments. So I will wrap it up by saying that the $8 million is for both short-term and longer-term assistance. Some families need short-term to stabilize their condition, and so it's one-time payments to help stabilize their situation. Others need up to 24 months or even longer to stabilize their position, depending on the characteristics of the family and their situation. And so what this pilot does is learn from what we've done over the last 4 years and really look to have a state solution that is crafted both to meet local needs, but also individual family characteristics about what resources they need to help stabilize their situation. And with that, I'll conclude. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Thank you. Oh, Representative Clark. If
Chair.
Commissioner Peterson could come up, you're next.
Just a
Representative
quick, just a quick question. You mentioned, the success that happens when we combine both the state and the federal resources here. And I guess I just like to know what you may know about any details of what's happening on the federal level with resources for both of these programs as we look forward. Help us understand what we may need to do with the state.
Well, Representative Clark, Chair, the proposed budget that's out there, again, these are state appropriated programs that don't have relation to federal programs. So these are additional resources. So the proposed federal budget has some cuts to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, where we get some of our development funds. And there's other resources, but it doesn't, those budget reductions don't impact what I just talked about.
Mr. Chair, okay, I thought I heard you indicate that there was a partnership between the federal and the state that really helped us with some of these issues.
Yes, so what I was briefly mentioning there is some additional resources that have become available through HUD for veteran supportive housing. We've been able to utilize that new resource along with housing infrastructure bonds passed by the legislature to combine those resources to address a homeless population with vets, and seen about a 50% reduction in the amount of homeless vets since 2010.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just would invite you as we go on in the next few weeks and months to keep us informed. I know it's a rapidly changing scene, and it would be helpful for us to be able to do what we need to do by being up to date on what's happening at the federal level. Thank you.
Certainly.
Seeing no additional questions or comments for the commissioner, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Peterson? Is Commissioner Rothman here too? You're on deck. So, Commissioner Peterson, you think you need 5-10 minutes?
Hoping you're done. We will. Again.
All right. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed to testimony.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Ken Peterson. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry. I'll quickly go through the items of the governor's recommendations for our budget increases, or budget changes, budget changes to our to the labor and industry budget. The one thing that's most notable, there are two things very, very notable that I wanted to point out. First of all is that the Department of Labor and Industry basically has relied on various fee-funded areas. We get about 1%, and the federal government money. We get about 1% of our budget from the general fund. The second thing that I want to point out is that we're calling for reductions of about $5.6 million, and our requests are somewhere, let me see, the range of 3.5. So we'd have a net savings, if you adopt the governor's recommendations, we'd have net savings of 2.1 million. I'll quickly go through the items though. First one is construction codes and licensing fee reduction. That is the construction codes, well, I should mention this too. We have given you a 3-page document that explains, that we gave you when we did our budget overview, explains what our department does. The second page, at the bottom, it has how our department, where the department's funds come from, how it spends. And the third page, it includes various parts of the governor's recommendations. The first one on the third page is a fee reduction for the construction codes and licensing. These are licenses and permits given for occupational license we issue, as well as electrical permits and other things that we're calling for a reduction of a total about $5.2 million. That for example, for a journey electrician, it'll be a reduction of $50 to $30 for his or her license. So it'll be a number of reductions like that put more money into people's pockets and get them to spend the money in their local communities. The second thing is, our second item is that we're in our labor standards division, which enforces the wage and hour laws. We're asking for technology modernization, a new case management system. Our computer system was put in the mid-'80s, and it's been updated a couple times since then, but it's still, it's pretty old, it's doddering, needs help. And so we're requesting $1.3 million out of the general fund. It would just help us be able to do our investigations faster, more accurate, and not make mistakes, and keep track of things a lot better and have a better idea, respond to citizens better, and to respond to all sides better. We need it. Hopefully you can seriously consider it. The third item is part of our wage theft prevention initiative. Wage theft is when an employer doesn't pay an employee the money they're owed. You work for a decent day's, reasonable day's work, you should get a reasonable day's pay. And too often, Minnesotans aren't getting that money. We've had a bill's been introduced here calling for increased enforcement powers to us, but we're asking for 4 new employees to help out in that effort. We've talked about the different problems here. People should just pay their help, I can give you all kinds of stories. I won't belabor the issue, but you should pay your help. It's an unfair competitive advantage. For those people who don't pay their people, it gives them an unfair competitive advantage over people who do pay their people. We just need more enforcement, more people. So we would ask you to seriously consider adding 4 people out of the general fund for this effort. Our fourth item is continuing the pipeline project and expanding its funding. This is Deputy Commissioner Jessica Lumen and I, this is our great pride and joy. We think this is one of those things that can really help change how, it's a model that can help change how people are trained in Minnesota. We think it's an important thing to do. What it is change the way you train people from being an educational institution based to being employment based. And it's based on it's basically the apprenticeship model. That just you go, you earn while you learn. And we're asking for a little more $400,000 increase in budget for that, and actually move the funding to the Workforce Development Fund, take it away from the general fund. So basically $1 million out of the Workforce Development Fund per the biennium, but it'd be a savings of $400,000 for the general fund, and it'd be 4 new people. The next items are all pretty small. The apprenticeship division, we're asking for $100,000 more for the LEAP program. That's a program that gives assistance to community organizations to help women and minorities join the apprenticeship programs. The next one is the construction codes and licensing clarifications of contract recovery fund. The contract recovery fund in Minnesota operates as kind of a bond for residential contractors. And it would read, we're asking right now, one contractor can only be held liable for, we can only pay up to $150,000 for per contract. We want to increase that to $300,000. Does not call for an increase in budget or fees for anybody. It just allows us to give more people money who've been hurt by either fraudulent or deceptive or unscrupulous contractor. Right now, we're limited to $150,000. The limit to $75,000 a piece would keep that limit on, but you could pay up to more people. We think it's a reasonable thing to do. It doesn't cost anybody any more money. Contractors agree with it. There's no disagreement on this issue. The next one is public assembly code enforcement. Right now, the building code's not enforced for public assembly buildings outside of communities that have back up. The building code applies statewide, but it's only enforced where communities choose to enforce it. There are a number of rural areas outside of towns and cities that it's not enforced. So we're asking that for at least for public assembly, for buildings where there are lots of people, where they have rooms of more than accommodate 200 people or more, that they have to meet the building code specifications and they have to meet a permit standard. It would cost they'd have to go through a permit system, and that costs somewhere between a permitting plan, they submit the plans to us, we look at them, approve them, make sure that the building holds up. This is based on a problem we had in Otter Tail County where the roof fell in a couple years ago in the middle of the night. Could have killed hundreds of people. I'm going to back off on it. It could have killed people. It did accommodate several hundred people. It was a water park that just caved in. So we think that they should be inspected. I mean, if we had one of those roofs fall in a busy day, say over a water park with a bunch of kids and their parents were playing, it'd be real damage in the Minnesota's resort industry. So we think we need something like that. It's a small thing, and we'd certainly like you to consider it. Then finally, we have a modernization project for the workers' compensation system. All we're asking here is to move the dates. We're supposed to have spent all the money by July 1st of 2019. We want to move it to July 1st, or June 30th, June 30th of 2021. We're not asking for any more money. We appropriated $16 million from Workers' Compensation Fund a couple years ago. We just think we're going to need more time than we originally asked for. So this is not asked for any more money. And then finally, the operating adjustment proposed by the governor calls for $133,000 out of the Workforce Development Fund, $173,000 out of the general fund. And that completes the governor's request, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Mahoney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Peterson, on the state inspection of spaces designed for 200 people or more, do you have an idea of how many spaces or how many towns that will affect?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Mahoney, no. We think our best estimate is that it would be around 15 projects, 10 to 15 projects a year. That's how we came up with the cost of $120,000 a year. But we don't know. It would have. I should back up. It affects a large part of the state where the building codes aren't enforced. I think it's in something like 75 counties, mostly rural counties where the building code is not enforced the entire county. So conceivably, it affects every one of those areas. However, large buildings aren't being built in every place. We can't say exactly how many it's going to affect. I'm not sure it's the right question, but I certainly don't have the right answer for it.
Representative Mahoney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So this doesn't affect buildings that are already up? This affects just buildings going up?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Howe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, I know we just recently talked about this, but is that something that, I understand that you added in the cost, but isn't that something our regional representatives, construction codes folks could possibly pick up and do? I mean, I know they're busy, but when we say might be only 15, 20 projects out there, isn't that something they could just add to their duties?
Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Howe, they will add to their duties. The money that we're asking, the fees that would be increased would be, they would submit their plans just as like a nursing home that's licensed by the state submits plans to us. They'd submit those plans to us. So it would not be, the people out there in the field, they would cover it.
Seeing no additional, Representative Anderson?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, under the Public Assembly Code Enforcement provision, would that apply to a church doing a remodeling project?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, no.
Representative Anderson, any follow-up?
No.
Okay. Seeing no additional comment, thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Rothman. What did you ask? What did you ask? I didn't hear the question.
Sure.
Oh. Welcome to the committee. Commissioner, about 5 or 10 minutes, you think okay?
As fast as we can.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, it's great to be here. Let me just tell you in your packets what you have is we have a slide presentation. I think the most efficient summary for you to look at is a 4-pager that goes with it. At the back of the 4-pager, First of all, it includes their overview of the budget, and then the third page includes the specific item of the governor's recommendations. And in the very last page, it's a little spreadsheet that summarizes it all for you. So that 4-sheeter looks like this. And then on the back, it has the spreadsheet. So these are the proposals that I'll go through at a very high level. Also in the packet is a 1-sheeter that goes into greater detail for each one of the proposals. So that's why I'll do my best to stay at a very high level for you. So as you know, I'm the Commissioner of Commerce for the state of Minnesota. We regulate energy, telephone companies, and more than 20 other industries throughout the state. Fundamentally, my job is to protect Minnesota consumers, as you know. We also work hard to ensure that we have strong and sound economy, that we have good financial sectors for all of our people in the state of Minnesota, and to serve the consumers and businesses in all the regulated industries. It's a big job, love what I do, but we also have some important things that we need additional assistance from you on the legislature to increase the ability of our ability of the department to do a great job. So beginning last summer, I asked my staff, we conducted a thorough budget review, and we came up with the critical items that we're presenting to you today. First of all is the Financial Institutions Division. Its top priority is to make sure that our state banks, our credit unions are safe and sound throughout all of our communities in Minnesota. We have 250 state chartered banks. 165 of those, or 2/3, are located in greater Minnesota, 78 state chartered credit unions, 600 mortgage companies, and over 400 non-depository financial institutions, which are lenders, money transmitters, etc. Just in the banks and credit unions, we oversee $55 billion in assets. However, in recent years, the division's ability to carry out its statutory responsibility has diminished significantly. We need to maintain our national accreditation, and we need to meet the industry's needs to make sure that we're serving all of those financial institutions. We are seeing two very troubling trends. First of all, the dramatic growth in the number of non-depository financial institutions has strained our division's resources. It's making it difficult to keep pace. And second of all, the department needs additional resources to provide and make sure that we have the staffing and recruitment in place to make sure that our people aren't really picked off by the private sector and federal regulators. Unfortunately, the flat budget has seriously impaired and constrained our ability to maintain and keep a pace with the needs for the department. To highlight the budget problem, the division's budget comes from a general fund appropriation, which I described previously, which has remained relatively flat in recent years. The division's assessments, license and renewal fees, and examination charges all get deposited into the general fund, and they don't go to the department. In reality, the budget constraints have prevented the department from filling and maintaining critical vacancies on our bank examination staff. We are without presently 5 or 6 people that we need to be in the banks examining them. We also need to reverse the trend of relying on and partnering with the federal regulators, which are financial institutions, as well as us at the State Department here, have problems with. Because we have reduced staffing levels, that means we need and sometimes have to rely on the federal regulators, so for example, the FDIC or the Federal Reserve, to assist us with our examinations. This is a problem for our state banks and others. It's costlier for them. It's costlier to do that. Fundamentally, our agency is more efficient. We're able to do it better. So the solution that we are proposing in the governor's budget is to provide new budget flexibility. The proposal would move the division's funding source from the general fund to a special revenue fund. It would deposit the fees as assessments into the fund. It does not rely on general fund taxpayer funds to do this, and it would effectively spread out the assessments to include the non-depository institutions to pay for their fair share of the oversight of their industries. You'll see that in your packets, we've talked to the industries, we've worked with them, and you'll see at least you'll see two letters of support from the Minnesota Credit Union Network and the Independent Community Bankers of Minnesota, who believe that this is fair and equitable, and it will help them, it will help us serve them better, and that's the objective of that proposal. The second proposal is for our Commerce Fraud Bureau. The Bureau has become the state's most effective white-collar criminal law enforcement agency for the state. We partner, for example, with the FBI, with the Secret Service, the Postal Service, you name it, on the federal investigator side, and we have developed a strong team. The Fraud Bureau's numbers are impressive. So we have gone from 27 criminal charges in 2008 to 129 in 2015, over 378%. We have obtained 93, on average, that's 93 criminal charges against defendants. And the number of the dollar amount of the economic impact that we have done is gone from $9.5 million to more than $48 million. In essence, the Fraud Bureau has become one of the state's strongest white-collar criminal defense or criminal prosecution or criminal investigators, just like the FBI and others, and whom we work together with. We also oversee the auto theft prevention account. All told, the Fraud Bureau, however, cannot continue to do the great work that it is doing without an additional assessment. The formula that it's based on has been in the statute since 2004, even though our case volume has more than doubled, and the great amount of work that we have done has increased significantly. We are unable to keep pace, or the assessment hasn't kept pace. So that's why the governor's budget recommends the increase to the existing authority. In essence, it's an assessment on the insurance industry. And that would help facilitate hiring 4 additional special agents that would continue to prosecute or help prosecute crime in Minnesota. The next is our securities unit. The securities unit is the state-based regulation for securities in the state of Minnesota. It's like we partner with the SEC. For example, we oversee $8.9 billion in securities assets under management. The governor's budget proposals we propose adding 4 full-time staff to strengthen the securities unit so that we will be able to fully meet our statutory responsibilities and to protect our consumers in Minnesota. So, for example, each year our securities unit reviews more than 200,000 license and registrations filings. In order to meet our statutory requirements, we need to increase our pace and keep up with our regulatory cycle. We want to make sure that we're advocating on behalf of investors. So our proposal is to increase the fees for investment advisors. That's embedded in our and as well into our broker-dealer agents. So next is our weights and measures. Weights and measures, as you know, and I've discussed that the committee oversees the gas pumps, the scales throughout the economy in Minnesota. Everything at our grocery stores to the trains are calibrated according to the Weights and Measures Division's scales that we have. We also instituted a credit card skimming program where we have caught 20 to 30 credit card skimmers in gas pumps throughout the state of Minnesota.
Commissioners, is there any changes to weight and measures in your proposal?
We are increasing what we're doing in the weights and measures is to increase the putting a 10% increase on the metrology lab fees and a 20% increase on all the other weights and measures fees in the area. I'll skip to the next one, the operating budget. The operating budget, the governor's budget recommends a general fund increase of $3.417 million and $33,000 for the Petro Fund for the biennium, which will address priority needs, pay for rising costs, and support the continued delivery of our services. Fundamentally, these go to address inflationary cost pressures, It also helps our Consumer Services Center, the Unclaimed Property Unit, and our licensing unit. The unfortunate situation we're finding ourselves in is that in order to keep pace with salary, health care, and pension needs, these are critical for our staff. We need to be able to fund these priorities. There are other operating costs such as rent and information technology that also need to that we also need to control. So, for example, we want to, in order to do this, we've managed to date by keeping essential positions vacant. We've also delayed hiring. We've also held off on some critical data security upgrades. And then we want to obviously make sure that we're responsive to the public by having optimal response times. So, so that is in essence what the funds are targeted for and would help us pay for. The next proposal is the payday lending proposal. The reason why this is in the budget as a budget item is that we are closing the what's known as the industrial loan and thrift company loophole. And by doing, once you do that, that would require the companies that are currently registered under that statute to switch over to the consumer small loan lender. It's a one-time registration, so it's altogether, all of them would be, would have to pay $11,250, which is why it's in the budget item. So again, this is our payday lending reform. Ultimately, the policy proposal in it includes limiting borrowers to no more than 4 short-term loans within a 12-month period and limit their short-term loan debt to no more than 90 days. It's a critical and important consumer protection and imperative for our consumers in Minnesota. The next item is the Healthy Air proposal. This is in the energy area. It's within the weatherization section of the department. And essentially what this proposal would allow us to do is to help fix a problem with being able to weatherize homes. Many homes cannot be weatherized because they contain vermiculite insulation, which is known cancer causing substance. Once that's found, we cannot use federal funds to do the weatherizations. Federal funds cannot be used to remove the hazardous materials, but we can use them to test for vermiculite. So in essence, what we will do is, once we find that there is vermiculite in the homes, we would use these funds, and this is to dedicate $260,000 per year to pay for the removal of the hazardous vermiculite insulation. It would allow us to do that and then allow us to proceed with the weatherization for these homes. And again, these are homes that are the most vulnerable. They're people who are senior citizens, they are sick, and they are disabled. And this would help us to, we think, get to about 65 eligible homes each year with an average grant of about $4,000. The next item is the Energy Efficiency Resource Standard. Members, what we're doing here is to increase the energy efficiency resource standard from 1.5% to 2%, which hasn't been done, or it hasn't been increased since 2007 under the Next Generation Act. This would be to increase it for electric utilities while maintaining the 1% standard for natural gas utilities. It would effectively allow us to save 1.2 million tons of carbon dioxide pollution annually, or the equivalent of over 250,000 cars from the road each year, and it would allow us, or would achieve a projected creation of, on average, over 1,500 jobs annually. These are contractor jobs that do conservation improvement projects, weatherization, energy efficiency throughout the state of Minnesota. The reason why it is under the budget is because budget proposal is that it would continue the assessment, $400,000 per year for the technical assistance that the department does to support the energy efficiency standard. And it also has within the proposal Mr. Chair, and members, a proposal to have combined heat and power to allow 800 megawatts of electric utilities, electric utilities, and 34 trillion BTUs for natural gas utilities, and to beef that up so that we have that done by 2030. To keep going and to keep a pace, it's a big proposal, I understand that, and I'm happy to answer questions in detail on that. We also have next a sustainable buildings proposal. In essence, this is the Guaranteed Energy Savings Program. It takes energy savings and converts that to financing to allow public buildings to do upgrades, save on their capital expenditures, and the proposal is for GESP to receive $650,000 for fiscal year 2018 and each year thereafter through the fees charged by GESP for its services. The fees would be deposited into a special revenue fund to provide ongoing support for the program. It's a 2.5% fee for an estimated project costs that would generate $650,000 per year. Ultimately, the program makes public buildings more efficient. It's a major opportunity to save money. It's also a major opportunity to provide jobs and to reduce energy consumption in our buildings. I believe the final item in our recommendations is a supplemental budget item. It recommends removing the sunset for the energy planning and systems assessment. In essence, fundamentally, in the energy area, one of the department's responsibilities is to help maintain the reliability of the grid. And by doing that, what we do is provide an assessment. It's a self-funding proposal. It would enable the department to continue to complete its technical analysis that it does to maintain grid reliability and for our electric system. Using the assessment authority, the initiative anticipates using about $500,000. We know the authority is up to $1 million, but it's only budgeted for $500,000 in annual funding for continued use of what would be the equivalent of 3 FTEs. Again, I would be happy to go into much greater detail on the specifics of the analytics, what we do, how we do it, and all of that, but that's in essence a high-level summary of the recommendations to the committee. Happy to stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate the thorough presentation. Representative Clark?
Just one quick question, Mr. Commissioner, do we have, or maybe Mr. Chair, do we have the bill for the asbestos installation remediation in this committee? I'm trying to remember if I've seen it.
If it was in the governor's budget, then yes, we would have it in our committee.
Okay.
Commissioner Rothman?
It's the governor's budget.
It's in that. Thank you.
Seeing no additional comments or questions, Commissioner, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
With
Thank you,
that,
members.
This completes our agenda for the day, and Representative Mahoney.
Mr. Chair, so could you kind of give us an outline of what the week ahead is? I just saw that the Senate brought out their bill last night, and is your intent to get your bill out this week, and if so, what's the kind of roadmap to that?
And the short answer, Representative Mahoney, is that we're working as quickly as we can to get the full bill released. There's some final decisions that need to be made. My expectation is that the bill will be released this week. We'll have an opportunity to either take public testimony this week or begin public testimony next week. But that all depends upon when the final work of the bill is done. But candidly, we just don't have a final version of the bill right now. So, Representative Mahoney, any follow-up at all?
Pardon?
Any follow-up? No, yeah, you have no follow-up.
But, so, Mr. Chair, for planning purposes, are we going to be, do you foresee us being here for a Friday hearing, for a Saturday hearing at all? I would bet that you won't have a Sunday hearing. A good Italian boy like you probably have to be in church.
If I had a Sunday hearing, you'd have a new chair. So we will not be meeting Sunday nor Saturday. There's a possibility we may be meeting Friday. We will be meeting tomorrow. And so that's where I think we'll know a lot more in about 2 or 3 hours, Representative Mahoney. And before we announce anything publicly, I'll make sure to contact you so that you can brief members of the DFL on it. But again, the expectation is we're not meeting Saturday. Friday is still a possibility.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no additional comments, we are adjourned for the meeting. Thank you.